Jesse, and welcome to this episode of Real Yakin How-Tos. It's been a little while since I made a video for y'all guys, so if I'm a little on the rough side, please bear with me. Today's topic of this how-to is going to be rod leashes and why they're so important to us kayak fishermen. So a lot of y'all may know already by now, and a lot of y'all haven't experienced it yet, but rod leashes are very important to us kayak fishermen. The reason why? It hurts a lot when you lose an expensive rod and reel it into the water and you can't recover it. I've lost 3 already before in one trip. It was not fun, and it was very expensive too. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to go ahead and give you a list of what y'all need to get these made, and from there I'm going to go ahead and show you how to make them afterwards. Alright, so these are the supplies that you're going to need to make these rod leashes. You're going to need a good sharp pair of scissors, some hog rings, some heat shrink tubing. I got 1/2 inch to 1/4 inch heat shrink. That means it starts as 1/2 inch and it shrinks down to 1/4 inch. A lighter or a heat gun for the heat shrink. Some carabiner clips. You can use whatever size you want. I like to use the small ones. A pair of channel lock pliers or some vice grip pliers for the hog rings. And of course, the bungee cord. Alright, so let's go ahead and get started. Once you're finished, you're going to have something that looks like this. Make your loops on one end, and then you go put your hog rings right here to clamp them down. You put your heat shrink over it, and go ahead and give it a nice finished look, and also so that there's no sharp corners or any points exposed from the hog rings. Alright, so I like to get about 10 inches of cord and grab it right in the center. In this case it'll be the 15 mark, which should be 5 inches, and fold it right in half right at the 5 inch mark. And you want to have about at least an inch to 1 1/4 inch tail end piece. You know what, let's go 1.5 inches. So you're going to have about 1.5 inches tail end piece. And that'll leave you a loop about that big. So that's a perfect size loop. So 1.5 inches tag end. So now that you have your loop made and measured out, you want to go ahead and take your hog rings. You want to put one just like so. You insert the hog ring, put it at your about 1/2 inch mark, 1.5 inch mark. You're going to take your pliers or your vice grips and you're going to grab the hog rings between them. And keep your fingers clear of this if possible, so that way you don't slip and pinch your fingers with the pliers. And then also be careful with the ends of the hog rings because they're very sharp, real pointy, so try not to go ahead and pierce your own finger with them. So anyways, you don't close them all the way. Leave them open a little bit so that they're still loose. And what I like to do, leave them open a little so they're still loose. And what I like to do is I like to get the hog ring and then turn it sideways like this. So I like to turn it sideways. Whichever one falls better. Might actually have to close this one up a little bit. So now you have something like this. So the prongs of the actual hog ring are off to the side of your loop. Once you got it like that, go ahead and take your pliers and then clamp it all the way down. If you pierce some of the bungee cord, that's fine. It's not going to hurt it. And just keep squeezing all the way down until each prong end comes to each other's side, just like so. Now you want to go ahead and squeeze these flat down as much as possible. So just keep going down. Like so. You're going to have these little sharp pointy ends. So unless you have some pretty good cutters that can cut those off, or you can just bend them down. you need to go ahead and try and bend them down as much as possible so they don't snag the heat shrink when you're putting it on. Alright, so once you have your prong ends pretty flattened out and pretty flush so that they're not poking or snagging anything, you want to go ahead and get your second hog ring. And you're just going to go ahead and repeat the same process. I'll make sure you have it about half an inch apart. Don't put it at the very end over here. Whatever tag end you have, if you have too much excess tagging, just go ahead and trim it off with some scissors. But the reason being is that you don't want to put them too far apart unless, well, if you buy enough shrink wrap, you can go ahead and do so. But these heat shrink wraps pieces come in about they come in about 3-inch increments, and I cut them in half, so it's only 1.5 inch pieces and when you cut them in half. And that's just so you can have more left over. So just kind of put that up there and figure out where you're going to put the next hog ring. So I'm going to put it about right here. And you just repeat the same steps. Alright, so once you have your hog rings on and they're nice and flush, you're going to have something that looks like this. Next you get your heat shrink wrap. And you just pinch the end of your loop down and slide the heat shrink right over it. Like so. And you just got to shimmy it right over the hog rings. Hog rings are right here, right in the center of the heat shrink. And if you see that you have too much of a tag in of cord left, you can go ahead and just pull your heat shrink back a little. Get your scissors and trim some off. Now, this is like nylon coating over the bungee, so I like to get the lighter and just heat it up so all this frays up, so none of this frays up, and it just singe it up. And that'll work. Wait till it cools down, because when this stuff is hot, if it melts enough, it's stuck to your finger and it burns really bad. So you just slip your heat shrink right back over it. Once you do that, this is where the heat gun or your lighter comes into play. Don't leave the heat on one spot for a long time, because you will burn the heat shrink. If you do have a heat gun, I recommend using the heat gun. The lighter gives it more of a focused heat on it, and it can melt it, and it makes the rubber smoke up a little bit too. The heat shrink tends to leave some black smoke up, so make sure none of your smoke alarms go off while doing this. Just want to make sure it's all evenly shrunk, and just wait for that to cool down before you touch it, because it can get pretty hot. And once you're done, you'll have something that looks like that. So the heat shrink keeps the hog rings protected. It also keeps from any snags happening on your line, or the hog rings cutting your line or anything. And it just gives it a nice clean finish like so. And then once you're done, you just take your clip and clip it to the end. Now what you can also do with this, once you make your other end loop, you just go ahead, instead of using this as a rod leash, you can also use it as a paddle leash. You just feed your paddle shaft right through here, And then on the other end loop, you put your carabiner clip, and you clip the carabiner to your kayak somewhere, and now you have a paddle leash as well. Alright, so now that I got one end made, I'm going to go ahead and make the other end. I'm making these at 4 foot. My table is 4 foot long. So I'm just going to go ahead and hook this to one corner of the table, hook this to the other end of the table, make my loop, and then just grab my loop like so. I already pretty much know what size loop to grab it at. Alright, so I got my hog rings all fixed and situated where I want them. Just gonna get my heat shrink, slip it over, and just go ahead and feed it like so. Have it. We have a finished rod leash now. This loop came out a little bigger, but that's fine. I'm gonna go ahead and measure it. It should be at 4 feet. Yep, at 4 feet, so it's perfect. Clip your carabiner clip to one end, and you can put another carabiner clip on the other end, or however you're going to use this. If you actually want to go ahead and make a paddle leash using the same method, all you have to do to go ahead and get a better bite on your paddle is just actually make your loop smaller. So instead of having a bigger loop like so, you just go ahead and you actually make it about this much tighter. So you'll make a small loop, so you'll have about a 1.5 inch diameter circle left. And remember, this is bungee cord, so it'll stretch over your paddle shaft, and it'll be for a nice, better, tight fit. But for now, I'm using these as rod leashes. I already have a paddle leash from Yakin, so there's no need for me to make one of those. And there you have it. Easy to make. Once you get it down, it takes you only maybe about 8 minutes, maybe 10 minutes to make one, maybe even less when you get really good at it. So there's the paddle leashes. So folks, that's all it takes to make these quick and easy rod leashes. I like to think of them as cheap rod and reel insurance for your good investments on your rod and reels. You know, your most expensive thing's going to be the bungee cord. Next, you're going to have to go ahead and buy your hog rings, the heat shrink wrap, and the carabiner clips, and then of course a lighter, or if you have a blow dryer or heat gun, you go ahead and use that to shrink the heat wrap. Also, you're going to need a good pair of pliers. If you don't have those already, go pick yourself up a cheap pair of pliers from Walmart or just from your auto parts store or wherever. You don't need nothing expensive or fancy. All you need them for is to clamp the hog rings down like I showed you. So any cheap pair of pliers will work. That's probably going to be the next most expensive thing if you do have to go buy some. Most people already have hand tools laying around the house anyways. If not, go borrow some from a friend or family member. So keep in mind, folks, you're going to spend about $25–30 on when it's all said and done, but it's better than going and losing a $200, $300 on up rod and reel combo in the water versus the ocean or, you know, the lake or river. So not too long ago, just last year during the summertime, I was doing a tournament. I lost 3 rod and reels at the lake. A boater came really close to me and his wake hit me sideways, and I flipped over to the left, and the 3 rod and reels that were in my milk crate weren't tied down. The two rod and reels that were in my trolling rod holders were on rod leashes, and those I saved. So I lost some very expensive rod and reel combos that day, and I was not able to recover them back. So you may think that just because you lose them that you'll be able to just cast there, and for the most part you might get lucky, but I think a lot of times you drift so far away by the time you realize it, you're not going to remember where you dropped those rod and reels in or where you flipped over. You're not going to be in the same spot anymore once you get back on your kayak. So remember, 25-30 bucks, cheap insurance for your rod and reels, and you're going to save your investments in the long run. So take your time making these, you know, don't rush it, make them look good, you know, because this is what's going to be saving your rod and reels from falling into the drain. Other than that, I'm Jesse. This is Real Yakin How-Tos. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope it's useful and informative for y'all. If y'all have any questions or comments, please leave me a comment below in the comment section. I also have a Facebook page. Go ahead and check it out and give it a like. I'm going to be posting a lot more things on there from now on, all my how-to videos, all my fishing videos, and whatever, you know, topics, whatever you want to talk about, or you think or want me to make a video about, go ahead and leave me a comment on Facebook as well. The Facebook link will be provided in the description below. Other than that, have a good day and tight lines, guys.